I'm Dream Queen, you're in the cab with me, and thanks so much again for rolling. You're listening to KMRD LP Madrid, New Mexico, and you're in the book club for this portion of the show. You can find archives if this is your first time or you want to go back and catch up a reference or anything. You can catch archives on In the Cab Radio at mixcloud.com and YouTube, same handle. You can find me on Instagram, In the Cab Radio. Please, it's a community event. Join in, shoot a message, whatever. Enjoy it. I want to do a little back story here for those of us who are just joining. We are on the chapter of giving. And if you're not familiar with Kahlil Gibran's The Prophet, the story is about a sage, a traveler, a nomad, wise person who has spent the last 12 years of his life in a town called Orphalese. And now this prophet, his name is Al-Mustafa, looks out in the distance and realizes that his ship is arrived through the mist to take him back to his homeland. So he decides he's going down to the port to await his ship, and word goes through the village that the time is nigh, and folks put down their plowshares. It's the month of reaping, and they're leaving their work of harvest and following him to the water. Almitra, a priestess in the town, a seer woman, asks, "We know you got to go. Would you please tell us of ourselves, what you've witnessed? Show us ourselves." And the prophet says, "I can't tell you what you don't already know," basically. "But if you insist, got some time to burn while we wait for the ship. So let's chat." So everyone's gathered around. Those are not Kahlil Gibran's words. His are way more poetic. You can find the book, The Prophet, on the internet everywhere. It is in its 101st year of publication. It is in public domain. You can find it free on the web. Just go ahead and do a web search. I recommend going over to KahlilGibran.com and learning more about Kahlil Gibran as a person, as an artist, as a political activist, etc., etc. All right. So, then said a rich man, "Speak to us of giving." And he answered, "You give but little when you give of your possessions. It is when you give of yourself that you truly give. For what are your possessions but things you keep and guard, for fear you may need them tomorrow? And tomorrow? What shall tomorrow bring to the overprudent dog burying bones in the trackless sand as he follows the pilgrims to the holy city? And what is fear of need but need itself? Is not dread of thirst when your well is full, the thirst that is unquenchable? There are those who give little of the much which they have, and they give it for recognition, and their hidden desires makes their gifts unwholesome. And there are those who have little and give it all. These are the believers in life and the bounty of life, and their coffer is never empty. There are those who give with joy, and that joy is their reward. And there are those who give with pain, and that pain is their baptism. And there are those who give and know not pain in giving, nor do they seek joy, nor give with mindfulness of virtue. They give as in yonder valley the myrtle breathes its fragrance into space. Through the hands of such as these, God speaks, and from behind their eyes, He smiles upon the earth. It is well to give when asked, but it is better to give unasked through understanding. And to the open-handed, the search for one who shall receive is joy greater than giving. And is there aught you would withhold? All you have shall someday be given. Therefore give now, that the season of giving may be yours and not your inheritors. You often say, I will give, but only to the deserving. The trees in your orchard say not so, nor the flocks in your pasture. They give that they may live, for to withhold is to perish. Surely he who is worthy to receive his days and his nights is worthy of all else from you. And he who has deserved to drink from the ocean of life deserves to fill his cup from your little stream. And what desert greater shall there be than that which lies in the courage and the confidence, nay, the charity of receiving? And who are you that men should rend their bosom and unveil their pride, that you may see their worth naked and their pride unabashed? See first that you yourself deserve to be a giver and an instrument of giving. For in truth, it is life that gives unto life, while you, who deem yourself a giver, are but a witness. And you receivers, and you all are receivers, assume no weight of gratitude, lest you lay a yoke upon yourself and upon him who gives. Rather, rise together with the giver on his gifts as on wings. For to be over-mindful of your debt is to doubt his generosity, who has the free-hearted earth for mother and God for father. Kahlil Gibran, the prophet, on giving. A lot of people playing possession, the possession game right now. Oof. Let's talk about this to our supermoon. Now I'm going off script. Let's talk about a reputation for Taurus. And let's talk about what a full moon is right now. I'm just going to take a quick aside. It's when the sun and the moon, the sun reflects off of the moon, okay? So the moon is in Taurus, or was last night. We're dealing with the vibrational field on either side of the day. So we'll feel this again. We'll feel this through the 18th is what I'm hearing from some astrologers, where some people understand the full moon. You have a lead in and a lead out. But anyway, these opposite signs, it's always opposites. And Taurus and Scorpio, sun's in Scorpio, moon's in Taurus, and the moon is emotion, and the sun is who we are as an I, right? These are archetypes, the way we talk in astrology about archetypes. Some of the qualities maybe on the shadow side, and we look at the moon as in the shadow because it's the nighttime. It's the nighttime light for most days of the month for us. And it is the hidden part of ourselves. And in the shadow side of these two signs, we share, because I'm a Taurus, y'all, we share possessiveness. We share a quality of love so deep that we hold on so tight, or a materialism, a holding on of a hoarding like a dragon. Okay, I know it's the bull, but let's talk about that. This country, this world, my land, my peace. We have to be very compassionate how we have these conversations right now, because there's a lot of homeless people in the world, and I'm not just talking about the unhoused in our streets. I'm talking about entire ethnicities. And as we look at who owns the world, and this chapter of Kahlil Gibran is on giving. It's not too far apart. We're in November. Y'all know that strange holiday of gratitude is coming up. Let's render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and render unto God what is God. And the land, everybody is somebody's nomad. We just had to be kind to each other. And that's also why the prophet is, relevant, because the underlying story is that of an immigrant. And the people of this land living attached to this land who don't get to travel, they look for wisdom from an outsider. And when do we become family? When do we become family and stop being outsiders? That's a story about Madrid that I like to chuckle about with people, especially when you've just been here for a year or two. And we've all been there, unless you were born here. And then you did still just been here a year or two, like when you were two. Anyway, sorry. But, it's like, how long does it take before you're considered local? It's just a joke. So I say 25 years. But anyway, I digress. And if we don't get into anything else in here, and I know we'll get to some other things, I have a couple of real strong points I'd like to just underscore. The first two lines of the poem is circled here. You give but little when you give of your possessions. It is when you give of yourself that you truly give. And I think that pretty much speaks for itself, but I don't want to gloss over it. I don't want to gloss over it in the society of capitalism that we live in. Because really, when you get down to even the rest of this entire piece, it talks about intentions and where our spirit of giving comes from. And, the different ways that people give for the different reasons. And as I said last week, these lines are in a specific order. It took him 11 years to write this book, to compile it. It's not just a willy-nilly collection of poems like my book. Here's 10 years of things I wrote about love. No, he's put this together meticulously with the help of others. And so these two lines open up and say it all. And I think it talks really things that we need to consider in today's world. Volunteerism. I went on that diatribe last week about queer youth, and I've been thinking lately about how to be more involved with youth. And obviously that was important to me while I was talking to you about it. And we all have to find within ourselves what that thing is that gives us passion and hope, and that we're willing to sacrifice for to grow, right? So I encourage us to think about that and the ways in which we can give of ourselves. So I said I'd hold up Dr. King. The 3 Dimensions of a Complete Life is a sermon about halfway through A Knock at Midnight. Again, a curated work. These sermons go pretty much in order of delivery, however. And in this sermon, he talks about how, I want to say David, okay? It does kind of matter. He's talking about how David is building a temple under specifications for God. And he talks about this himself being an analogy for a human character. And you have to have the appropriate length, breadth, and height to have a stable structure. Okay. And so that's where he's talking about the 3 dimensions of a complete life. And he says that the length of life, as we shall use it, is the inward concern for one's own welfare. And he opens that up with that, the self. We have to maintain the self. That's why we spend so much time here talking about self-discovery and self-awareness, because that's where everything starts. And then he goes on to say the breath of life, as we shall use it here, is the outward concern for the welfare of others. So a self and then community. And the height of life is the upward reach for God. You've got to have all 3 of these to be a complete life. Now, for my atheists in the house, I get it. Whatever you call God, if it's an ideal, because we need to be tapping into values, so that's useful. Whatever that high shining bar is that you set for coexistence, because we discussed that God is love and God is supports life, okay? Then whatever that means to you, that supports life, okay? So as he goes into the breath of life, page 131, he says, somewhere along the way, we must learn that there is nothing greater than to do something for others. And he talks about the Good Samaritan who's on this road. And the Good Samaritan is the Good Samaritan because other people walked past a person in need of help on this very dangerous road. Like two holy men on their way to temple were afraid to stop and help this citizen who was down. And the Samaritan stopped and he asked himself the question, not what will happen to me if I stop to help this man, but what will happen to this man if I do not stop to help him. Okay? And Dr. King says that this is what God needs today, is men and women who will ask, what will happen to humanity if I don't help? What will happen to humanity if I don't help? Whatever help looks like to you. This was in 1967. He delivered this speech. His people were being bombed. People were doing boycotts. People were being beaten in marches by police. Dr. King had been in jail 18 times, solitary confinement for Black civil rights. Okay, so we're in these times now where people are scared, and we've been through some things before. And one of these is, like, y'all remember when they started coming for the DACA people, and folks were in churches, and lawyers and religious people were working together to protect folks from being snatched up and deported, or worse, being put in detention facilities. Okay? I'm not talking about the 50s. I'm telling you, like today, like a couple years ago, we still are experiencing internment camps for immigrants. So all you people who are Christians, I'm talking specifically because we're talking about having to come together around Christian nationalism. And everybody who wants immigration reform and stuff like that, we can get reform without putting people in camps. So if we have to do things, just start thinking about it now. What of yourself are you willing to give to the stranger or the neighbor? Who's your neighbor? Because tomorrow, this is a line. What shall tomorrow bring to the overprudent dog burying bones in the trackless sand as he follows the pilgrims to the holy city? What does that mean? I'll tell you, the trackless sand, life is fleeting. Life is fleeting, and we're fleeting. Even people that we remember for a couple of 100 years. I mean, do you know you gotta build a pyramid and etch stuff with a spaceship into the side of a mountain, or else you're forgotten. The trackless sand, as he follows the pilgrims to the holy city. To me, that sounds like a little bit of an analogy to death and leaving behind the material. And it brings me to this point later on in the poem where he says about withholding. All you have shall someday be given. Therefore give now, that the season of giving may be yours and not your inheritors. Let's talk about this. A lot of people fight over dead people stuff. I think many of us have had that experience. I haven't really, because people in my life who died didn't have anything. But many people do fight over dead people's things. And if we tie together the poem on children that we covered last week, that we set our children free to build lives. And of course, you want to set things aside for your future generations. That's understandable. It's one thing to set things aside for them now than when you're gone and people are trying to inherit your wealth and fighting over scraps, fighting over what you left behind until it's gone in lawyers and it has caused more strife than good. Then those gifts are unwholesome, right? And it becomes misery. And if we plan to give now so that we can have the joy of the experience of seeing our gifts take wings and going with the recipient, like as at the end of this poem, rising with the gift and the grantor, that's beautiful. You get to experience this in your chest, right? In your heart chakra. But when you're withholding and you're worried about tomorrow that may never come, then, you're kind of losing out. You're kind of losing out. That's what Gibran is saying here. And what about the people who give only to the deserving? What does that mean? What does that mean? Oh boy. Well, I had an experience. I could tell you. I'll share experience with you, because it's an experience that doesn't have to do with money. It has to do with the first part of giving of myself, zipping up and down the highway here. Already been to where I need to go and back, and passed someone on the road a couple times. I knew who it was, and I know that it's just not cool, And I thought surely somebody else will do this. And I said, the third time, because I went there and back again like Bilbo, there and back again, and then I was like, he's still walking. And I knew they had an injury, and I went ahead and gave the ride. And it's because, I felt like I needed to just be that vessel at that time, regardless of everything that was working in my mind against it. I know I'm being really vague here. We're a small town, so I don't want to go too deep. But I will say that if that person is still has breath in their body, they still have a part to play. It's kind of like that Gollum role that I was talking about last week. perfect analogy. See, I just sat here, asked y'all why didn't Sam, and then I'm going over here pulling a Frodo. You know, so we all have a part to play. We all have a part to play, and we don't know the plan. So we have to respect life. We have to respect life. I think we all know what is going on here. We all know within our hearts what we need to do in society today to show up, and what we need to overcome within ourselves to show up better. It is well to give when asked, but it is better to give unasked through understanding. For all of us who can be in the moment and see what's needed before we're asked, that's a gift. What is fear of need but need itself? We live in a time of scarcity, perceived scarcity. We live in a time where people are pushing fear and hate. And I just want to say that I talk to you about the spirit because when you understand that fear is just robbing you of your power. We are all related. So if you feel like you're afraid of losing something, see what it is that you're already missing. Try to fill your cup up from there, and you'll have less fear. If it's fear of hunger, if it's fear of aloneness, if it's fear of an immigrant coming and taking your job or whatever, I don't know. I just don't know what people are up to these days. Jesus. Just be good, y'all. Don't hoard. We don't have any time left for this nonsense. We really don't. We really don't. I appreciate all of you. All right, y'all. Check out the federal government interviewing whistleblowers about UAPs. You can find that online for free at YouTube. That's some interesting things that got me distracted this week. It's really been reported that there's a disproportionate number of sightings seen around military installations and our nuclear facilities. That's given me some hope this week. I've been watching UFOs for a lifetime, and I really appreciate to all of those interdimensional beings. Thanks for keeping us from blowing each other to smithereens over money and land and power. It's ridiculous. Thanks for hanging in with me, y'all. Appreciate you as always.